Dame Jean et Jolie by Maurice Leblanc. Dame Jean et Jolie desser compagnon de voyage per faire a bicycle la côte normande. C'est trouver le mardi, says a catcher au de la côte de Cantlou, près de Rouen. I do not know what whim took hold of me when reading these lines in a newspaper. A young and pretty lady. It was tempting. Besides, for the past few weeks, I had been feeling a great desire for movement and the open air. Well, I said to myself, if the weather's fine on Tuesday the 16th, I am going. The weather was more than fine. It was one of those June mornings when all the joy of nature and all the gladness of life vibrate. I set off. A carriage. I wanted to appear in good standing. A carriage took me up the hill of Canteleu. At 4 o'clock, I arrived at the meeting place, quite moved, very curious, and a little anxious. Young and pretty? Was it possible? Does a young and pretty woman need to look for a travel companion through an advertisement? Vain anxieties. When she appeared at the turn of a side road where she must have been waiting, a single glance was enough to dispel them. She was adorably young, adorably pretty. But then why? She came to me smiling, her hands outstretched, and said to me, "Is there only you?" "There is only me," I replied, naming myself. Well, I would have thought that such an attractive advertisement would have drawn more than one gentleman to me. Besides, so much the better. Otherwise, I would have had to choose. She was truly charming, well-proportioned in her blue cloth bolero jacket open over a white blouse, and in her short skirt, which exactly outlined the shape of her hips and flared out at ankle height in supple, undulating folds. "Let us go," she said to me. Right away, between us, the conversation was most free and natural, without affectation or embarrassment. I have never met anyone who gave the impression of greater spontaneity. One felt she was cheerful and simple, frank and clear, instinctive and childlike. Her smile had a winning, so to speak, honest quality, and seemed the visible expression of a fresh and happy soul. Her gestures were graceful and precise. We were so much at ease with each other that I told her all this in a joking way while we were cycling through the forest of Romare. The effort of your legs is just right. That is why it is invisible and so light. You give what is needed, neither too much nor too little, and with a decisiveness, a certainty in which one can guess reserves of strength. She laughed, and so deliciously. It was like music scattering behind us. And she sang, too, in a delicate voice that did not disturb the silence, but on the contrary blended harmoniously with it. And she looked at me sometimes, as one looks at a friend whose proven affection has been known for a long time, and who forgives you for being a little coquettish. Information about her? One did not even think of asking her. The adventure pleased me all the more because it kept a side of mystery. I did not know where she came from. I did not know at all where we were going. I let myself be guided by this child toward a goal that she perhaps did not know herself, and it is exquisite to abandon oneself like this to the whims of chance. We had gone down the hill of St. George, and we were gliding along the Seine between the beautiful, peaceful river and the white cliffs. I said to her, "I feel as if I have always known you, have I not?" "Always, and everyone knows me like that from the very first hour. That is not to say that there is nothing hidden in me, for after all, I have my secrets, for example, this excursion." She broke off, remained pensive, and murmured, "We shall see." And she began to speak again, carefree and naive as before. A stop at Duclair to refresh ourselves, and we set off again. We went up, we went down, then near the majestic old trees that surround the castle of Luteolis, she left the main road and took a path to the left that plunged into the woods. "You are not afraid?" she asked me. "No, I would follow you to hell. Perhaps we are going there." Another shadow passed over her moving face. Her pace became less brisk. It even seemed to me that she was hesitating and that she was on the point of stopping. It was only for a moment. We continued. Nevertheless, that moment returned, and having looked at her, I found her very pale. She said to me, "Put your hand on my shoulder, good, closer." She smiled at me with a very sweet look. I wanted to draw her against me. So much did her blonde hair, her pink cheeks, her whole fresh face tempt my lips. But with her fingers she pointed to a clearing that opened 100 paces ahead of us. The Crossroads of the Damned. Her hand trembled a little. Her voice had also trembled, and as we approached, I noticed that she was bending lower over her handlebars. But at the entrance to the crossroads, she burst out laughing and, with an effort, straightened up. At the same moment a shot went off, a bullet whistled past my ear. Then another detonation. My hat was carried away. Behind us a curse rang out. "Quick! Quick!" she cried, leaning with all her weight on the pedals. And we fled. It was a wild race through the bad paths of the forest, then the crossing of a village and of meadows bordered by poplars. And the same blocked our path. Right nearby, there was an orchard where we took refuge. There, she said, we are safe. Besides, he has not followed us. Of whom are you speaking? I asked her. Why, my husband. What, it was he? It was he who fired perfectly. I must have looked quite funny, because she burst out laughing. Well, what? Are you afraid now? I went up to her, and, taking her hand not without some roughness, I said, You knew that your husband was stationed there? Yes. Then why? There it is. It is difficult to explain a woman's whim. Imagine that we love each other very much. Adrian and I especially. I adore him. That is another thing. He loves me at times, at others not enough, not as I would like to be loved. He is not jealous, that is it, or at least I imagine that he was not. It annoyed me, and I said to myself, after all, he is not because he has no reason to be. But what if he had the opportunity? So I wanted to see, and I had this advertisement put in the newspaper, and to him I wrote an anonymous letter. Sir, your wife loves another man. Be next Tuesday, around 6 o'clock, at the crossroads of the damned. You will see them pass. And he came, and you see, he is jealous, contrary to what I thought, jealous enough to have tried to kill us. I confess that it took a certain effort of will for me not to throw myself upon her and beat her. What? Was that the fresh and ingenuous soul that had charmed me, the cheerful, clear, and so candid creature whose smile had seemed to me as pure as a child's smile. I looked at her for a long time without her lowering her eyes. And truly, those eyes had an unspeakable purity, the eyes of a virgin who does not lie, and whose soul is truly ingenuous and fresh, the eyes of a woman, the soul of a woman. That is all. She said to me, Are you angry? No, I replied, understanding the absolute uselessness of any reasoning. Only, explain to me. You could not have been without some suspicion of what might happen to us. You suppose this rifle shot was possible? Obviously, and it was almost pleasant, this waiting and awful at the same time. What a sensation I had as we approached. Was he there? What would he do? I wanted to ask her, well, and what about me in this whole affair? For after all, you were not alone. The danger was the same for both of us. That you would face it, so be it, but I a stranger, an outsider. But what was the use of asking her that? She would not have understood. The best thing was to leave, which is what I did, with a very respectful bow. In the Shadows, by Maurice Leblanc. Through a breach in the hedge, groping his way, the man passed. It was a dark night. One could sense thick clouds close by. Step by step, he crossed the garden, bumping against the branches of the trees. It took him long minutes to open the porch door. Then began the endless ascent of the stairs, done on his knees, his hands gripping the railing. And suddenly, on the first floor, he began to run, cross the hallway, and burst into his wife's bedroom. There was a cry of terror. A half-naked man leapt from the bed. The candle was extinguished, and a shadow reigned. Instinctively, the husband closed the door again and leaned against the frame, so that the guilty ones could not escape. This darkness confused him. What to do? What to say? Choking with rage, he cried out, Traitors, scoundrels! But his voice seemed to sound so strangely in the darkness of the room that he stopped. Desperately, he searched his pockets. No matches. The fireplace was not far away. He headed there noiselessly, found nothing, knocked over a candlestick, and hurried back to the door. His embarrassment increased. He did not dare move anymore. The silence accumulated, and distinctly, the sound of the 3 hearts beating with terrifying blows grew louder. But where, my God, where were they hiding? In the end, this stillness weighed on him. He rushed onto the bed, his fingers eager to strangle. No one. With a bound, thinking he heard a creaking sound, he returned to his post. Obviously, the guilty ones were hiding behind some armchair. He gathered his memories, prepared his attack, and rushed toward the supposed spot. Vain searches. He lost his mind. This game of hide-and-seek drove him mad. And little by little, something mysterious penetrated him, a kind of inexplicable fear, the fear of the silence in which he was struggling, the fear of the shadow that enclosed him. This shadow. He felt it thick, palpable material. He ate it, he breathed it. It was heavy on his shoulders, heavy on his chest. It walled up his eyes, it blocked his ears, it closed his nostrils, it invaded his brain. He began to tremble. His teeth chattered. He felt as if he were buried alive, buried in the shadow. He was suffocating, and in spite of himself, in a supplicating voice, as one phrases a wish on which your existence or your happiness depends, he whispered, "Do you have any matches?" That year, my Uncle Anthime did not have, as much as in previous years, reason to rejoice in my presence by his side. Mayor of the small village where my family sent me to spend the vacations, he saw to it that each stay increased, not my physical or intellectual aptitudes, but my moral faculties, my wisdom, my knowledge of good and evil, of what is just and unjust, of what one ought to do and what one ought not to do. Thus, every walk was a pretext for virtuous dissertations. The sight of a plowman made him praise the patriarchal customs of the countryside. At the end of the vacation, I would leave, saturated with good maxims and admirable examples, and my uncle did not hide his joy at having opened for me a little further the paths of honesty and righteousness. But this time, I felt from the very beginning a certain shyness in the defense my uncle made of the fortifying spectacles I would benefit from during the summer. And it did not take great clairvoyance on my part to know the causes of his embarrassment. In the spring, after an epidemic of scarlet fever that had devastated the region, my uncle brought from the neighboring town and housed for free in a small cottage belonging to him, an old doctor by the name of Grimard. At first, everything went for the best. The physician conscientiously attended to his patients. He lived alone, with his maid, and set an example of a simple and regular life. But soon, strange rumors began to spread. They took shape, became specific, and it became notorious that Selina, pronounced Selena, Dr. Grimard's servant, was behaving in the most abominable manner possible. People connected coincidences. They told facts. I arrived right in the middle of this scandal, and there would have been no way to hide it from me. It was too public. People talked of nothing else. Women, on the thresholds of their doors, called out to one another, commenting on the latest adventure. All the young men of the town passed through there. Married men, even, were caught by surprise, and it was said that my Uncle Anthime's gardener offered Selina the finest fruits from the orchard. This poor uncle was at his wit's end. What would he not have given so that I might not be the witness to such excesses? He certainly had the idea of sending me back home. But one morning, with the energy of someone who has made a great resolution, he grabbed me by the arm. "Listen, you are almost a man now. Well, you're going to see how we deal with evil. I want you to take a lesson here that will influence your whole life." He dragged me to the doctor's house. There I saw Selina hanging out laundry in the garden. She was a girl neither young nor beautiful, but one who provoked attention by the effrontery of her manners and by the display of her forward chest. We quickened our pace. Mr. Grimard received us himself, and immediately my uncle, having assumed a grave posture and a stern face, explained, "My dear doctor, I will not beat around the bush. Here is the matter. You cannot be ignorant of the shameful conduct of your servant. The unfortunate woman, alas, does not hesitate to satisfy her gross appetites almost publicly, and this happens before your eyes, before the eyes of the village, before the eyes of the children. It is an example that cannot fail to bear fruit in the midst of the most united families. Now, I am the elected guardian of the morals of this country, and I have come to beg you to put an end to the existing state of affairs." Mr. Grimard, pronounced Grimard, A little old man with a sad and kindly look insinuated, "Pardon, Monsieur Mayor, but what should I do?" "Why, goodness gracious, it is easy," cried my uncle. "Send Selina away, or else, or else." In an embarrassed tone, my uncle added, "Or else I shall find myself obliged to withdraw from you the privilege of this house. Come now, doctor, it is not possible that you hesitate between the pleasant situation you have here and this creature." Very gently, the old man placed his hand on my uncle's arm and said to him with gravity, "Do not speak too ill of her, sir, for this creature is my wife." "Your wife?" We looked at him dumbfounded. He resumed slowly, "I confess this to you, so that you may know everything before you take away from me the small place where I intended to end my days, sheltered from want. Yes, it has been 20 years since I married her. She was from a good family. We lived in the provinces, and my situation was prospering. Then, suddenly, Selina's conduct changed. She had lovers. It became known, I lost my practice, and I had to leave. Then we went from town to town, and she always started all over again. You will tell me, why did you not drive her away?" "I did drive her away, sir, and then she came back, and what would you have? I loved her and I forgave. And so I accepted everything, out of cowardice, out of pity too. To ruin my life by closing my eyes, or else to think only of my future and reject the unfortunate woman. But what would have become of her? Into what abjection would she have fallen?" He added sadly, "The years have passed. I no longer love her. It has been a long time since I loved her. I could have left her, rebuild a life for myself. I did not want to because... He leaned toward us and whispered, "Listen, I am a doctor, and I have studied her case a great deal. Well, it is not her fault. No, it is her nature that wills it. So little by little, I asked myself what harm there was in that. Yes, why is it a shame to have sensual appetites and to satisfy them? We eat well like the beasts, we drink, we sleep like them. Why should we not, like them, make love when we feel the desire? Now, as for me, I cannot satisfy my wife. Let her look elsewhere then, and I will not drive her away, because she obeys the body that nature gave her." He said in a grave tone, "Voici la dernière partie du texte en anglais. Entièrement adapté pour un narrateur avec le remplacement d'abbréviations et éligible d'indications phonétiques pour les noms propres. If I do not love her, do not believe either that I hate her, no. She is so gentle, so affectionate, so full of good qualities. She has only that. Is it a flaw? I do not know. Why should it not be a virtue? Come now, who would prevent us from looking upon it as a virtue? This energy of the body, this inexhaustibility of the senses, this superb passion of the flesh which age itself cannot manage to tame? In truth, sir, I bear her no ill will. I forgive her everything, and that is why, when you offer me this post, I passed her off as my servant. Yes, as my servant. You certainly would not have accepted the misconduct of a wife, but a servant, I hoped." He fell silent. What pity I felt for him! What fear that they might take away his livelihood! And I thought of the moral lesson that my uncle had wanted to give me. A strange lesson I had received, very distant from the proposed goal, a lesson all the more profound, a lesson of justice, of truth, of indulgence, of infinite forgiveness. Ah, my uncle could very well drive the poor old man away and display the whole apparatus of his rigorous principles, but it would be no less certain that I had taken my first and best lesson in real life. But this abnormal event occurred. My uncle Anthime pronounced, and Team seized the old man's hands, stammered a few incomprehensible words, and left quickly, as if he had wanted to hide some secret emotion. 10 cents, 2 pennies. 6 centimes, 2 sous. Maurice Leblanc. I do not quite know what feeling I was obeying when I stopped my small car in the middle of this hill. Was it pity for this old tramp who was laboring under the horrible sun, or the vague need to perform an act that would seem original to me and give me a good opinion of myself? I called out to him, "Hey, friend, where are you heading at that pace?" He replied, "To Villedieu." I said, "By Jove, another 20 kilometers in this furnace-like heat. And after that, he uttered, "Tomorrow, it will be Saint Hilaire." I exclaimed, "Saint Hilaire, I'm going to myself. Come up and sit near me. You will save about 15 leagues anyway, which is not to be looked down upon." He looked at me with astonishment, then looked at his sordid and dusty rags, the pieces of leather and cloths that wrapped his feet. The poor man! What misery and what dirt! "Come on," I said to him. "Put your bundle there in the back and come." "My faith," he replied, "you are very good." And he climbed up and sat down. We set off. The hill being finished, we went down toward a deep valley. There was a little breeze and quite fresh. My companion said to me, "It is not very hot." I could not refrain from offering him a garment. Having only my goatskin coat, I offered it. He accepted it without ceremony. I smiled seeing him dressed up in that manner. He had the appearance of a very important gentleman, his white beard mixed with the fur of the collar, stiff, a little formal, and so comical with the stitched pieces of felt that served him as a head covering, with the rags that hung along his legs and the cloths tied around his feet. I felt like crying out, "Well, my lad, you are in luck. A ride in a car." I was very pleased with myself. My kindness seemed extreme to me. What helpfulness! Right away, I questioned him about his life, hoping indeed that I had rendered a service to some former bachelor of arts fallen into misery. Unfortunately, it was nothing of the kind, and I realized very quickly that my companion was not, and never could have been, anything but the most lamentable of brutes. No flash of wit, no idea. He seemed not to have lived, not even to be alive. Names of villages, confused memories of a stroke of luck, of a memorable feast, or of famine, or of a harsher winter. That was all I could get out of him. At least, I thought, he will have the memory of a beautiful day. And I said to him, "It is not the same thing, is it? It goes fast, it is pleasant, one breathes at ease." On this side, also my efforts failed. One would have thought that nothing struck him, that he neither saw nor heard. I did not detect in him the slightest astonishment, the slightest curiosity. At Villedieu he asked me, "Are we not stopping?" I replied, "What is the use of stopping? The machine is never tired." And we continued on our way. I had given up trying to make him speak. The long stage to Saint Hilaire was accomplished in silence. A silence that was a little embarrassed on my part. The role I was playing was beginning to appear to me, I wonder why, under a less attractive aspect. Not being able to believe in the complete stupidity of the old man, I imagined that, deep down, this journey was not without some bitterness for him. His confused sensitivity must have been stirred. He must have compared his painful and endless marches under the sun or in the rain with this delicious and easy gliding which brought him toward the goal, usually so distant, of his efforts. In that case, what a painful comparison! What a cruel and unforgettable suffering I was bringing into his life. If he had been a little less rough, a little less unconscious, he would have wept. He did not weep. He did not move, always impassive, with the appearance of an old landowner, very dignified and very formal. Upon arrival, he got down, shook himself, took up his bundle again, and looked to see if anything was missing from it. I asked him, "Well, here you are arrived. What are you going to do now?" He replied, "Return toward Villedieu." I said with surprise, "To Villedieu? We have just come from there." He uttered, "Yes, but I will tell you. There's a good lady there who always gives me 2 sous when I knock." I objected, "And it is for that reason that you will redo these 10 leagues, even 20 leagues with the return journey? I do not want you to." I held out a 5-franc piece to him. He took it, felt it, then concluded, "That makes no difference. It is always 2 sous. You might well give me thousands and hundreds, but the 2 sous from the good lady, that will always be 2 sous more." The reasoning was right. I said to him, "As you please. Goodbye." "Goodbye," he said to me, and he walked away. He even walked away with my goatskin coat, and, quite naturally, had he understood that I had offered it to him, I was on the point of calling him back. But he had such a funny look under that comfortable fleece, such a wealthy appearance. A real gentleman driver to whom a misfortune had happened. As for the trousers, the boots, and the head covering. And for a long time, not without some regret, I looked at my goatskin coat traveling along the road to Villedieu, and I said to myself that, all things considered, my action had been illogical and childish. To want this miserable man to arrive sooner at his goal, but are the unfortunate then in such a hurry to arrive at their goal? Is what awaits them at the stage so desirable that we must also steal from them the monotonous and deadening distraction of the daily journey, and then a goal for them? But they have no other, alas, than to receive the tiny alms that will give them bread, which will prevent them from dying on the side of the road. As for the rest, the joys of speed and of eliminated distance, the sensations of nature, of free space and of the open air, the automobile of the obliging gentleman who passes by, bah, what is all that compared to the 2 sous of the good lady? The Travel Case, an unpublished short story by Maurice Leblanc. All the friends of Madame de Horven had gathered around her to celebrate the 31st birthday of this gracious woman. She was loved by all, adored by many, and she knew how to respond to affection and love with the same sweet and comforting friendship. On that day, from every corner of Stockholm, everyone brought their offering: flowers, trinkets, boxes of sweets, and lace. Each person received, in return, a smile and a word that were the same for everyone, yet seemed to each the finest reward. But one gift attracted special attention and won unanimous approval. When the papers were undone and the object appeared, Madame de Horven blushed with pleasure. "Oh, Karl Andermatt," she said to a tall German man buttoned tight in his frock coat, his mustache bristling and his eye armed with a monocle, "you have spoiled me." Karl Andermatt, who was just starting out in Stockholm as a representative of a Hamburg firm, and who was seeking support in high society, protested. "One must do the impossible to please Madame de Horven, and this is still unworthy of her." It was a travel case from the Restoration period, made of mahogany, just like the ones people used to carry at the bottom of large carriages in those days. It was completely lined on the inside with old brick-colored leather and contained, arranged in perfect order, the most diverse utensils: goblets, mirrors, small stoves, gilded silver cups, ivory brushes, flasks, notebooks with precious bindings, silver knives, and 20 more things, amusing and unexpected, which, thanks to ingenious mechanisms, were discovered hidden one beneath the other. "It is delightful," murmured Madame de Horven ecstatically. "I have never seen anything that pleases me to this extent. And what craftsmanship! It is French art at its most seductive. In truth, Karl Andermatt, I do not know how to thank you." Instinctively, all eyes turned toward a young man who stood apart. This was Georges d'Estours, an attaché at the French legation, and one of the most frequent guests of the house. If sometimes one could have discerned, in the attitude of Madame de Horven, in the sound of her voice, or in the expression of her gaze, a certain preference for one of her friends, it would have been in favor of this very simple boy, of a somewhat cold appearance, whose face was scarred by a wound, and whose buttonhole was adorned with the war cross. "What do you think of it?" she said. "It is truly from your country, is it not?" Having pushed to the front row, a circle was forming around them. Stiffened, puffing up with importance, his face red. "It is indeed from my country," the young Frenchman pronounced. He took a goblet, examined it, put it back in its leather case, and added with a tone in which some emotion could be felt: "It is rare to find these cases even at antique dealers. Families guard them jealously, like relics of the most intimate past. For my part, I have never seen a single one that was for sale. This one was nevertheless sold. Remarked, since bought it. Did not answer. Distractedly, he triggered different springs, like a man accustomed to these kinds of secrets, and the attitude he maintained imposed a silence full of curiosity around him. At last, he turned to the German. "You fought in the war, monsieur?" The two men had often met at the house of. Always polite to one another, they avoided speaking and, as much as possible, shaking hands. Began to laugh. "By Jove, monsieur, like a good German that I am. For years of war. In France?" "Of course," emphasized. "For 4 years I fought in France. In the department of?" "A little everywhere, but also, indeed, in the department of." "And you were perhaps stationed in the vicinity of?" The German hesitated, as if he were surprised by this interrogation. Then he declared, "I seem to remember, indeed. Let us be precise, at the castle of?" This time, the German balked. "What does this question mean?" he asked. "Oh, my question is very natural, monsieur, and if it is not unpleasant for you to answer it, I will tell you the reason immediately." Shrugged his shoulders. "Unpleasant? Why? There is no harm, I think, in having lived at the castle of, toward the end of 1916, as a stage commander." "No harm. Then, I hope you will be good enough to explain to me, monsieur." The tone of the two speakers was becoming drier, their bearing more hostile. Grew worried. With a look, reassured her. He chose a cigarette from the table, lit it from the cigarette that was smoking herself, and pronounced calmly, "It is a very small story, like so many others, and one that only takes on importance because of the chance that puts me face to face with monsieur. During the German retreat, at the beginning of 1917. Strategic retreat, corrected with a smile. During the strategic retreat of the Germans, in 1917, resumed, the castle of, already the residence of the stage service, also served as the headquarters for a division. At the moment of evacuation, all the buildings were sprayed with oil, set on fire, and furthermore, demolished with mines. They sawed down the trees, they poisoned the ponds and the wells. Of the neighboring village, not a stone was left standing. Strategic necessity, the German noted, raising his arms with a sorrowful air. On the eve of this destruction, continued, another strategic necessity had caused all the furniture and object from the castle of any value to be gathered on the main lawn, and all the officers present had been amply provided for by means of a free raffle that took into account rank and individual influence. "How well informed you are, monsieur," said Karl Andermatt, affecting a joking tone. "Does all this interest you so much?" "Very much. The castle, or rather the ruins of Fresebor, belong to me." "Oh," the German uttered, disconcerted. Around them, the silence grew heavy with anxiety. The situation was one of those that have always struck the imagination. Beyond the harm already done, circumstances brought face to face the one who caused the suffering and the one who endured it. What did Georges d'Estours want now? Would he take this opportunity to seek revenge on his adversary? Madame de Horven, standing very close to him, stammered, "I beg of you." He calmed her with a gesture. He was impressively quiet, and no sign of anger or resentment escaped him. He was moving toward a goal that no one else could see, but which he seemed certain to reach. "Fresebor is a family estate," he explained. "My mother returned there after escaping in 1914. Completely ruined, she lives with one of our former tenant farmers who was kind enough to take her in, and it is through him that we were able to reconstruct the scenes I have just told you, and through him that we learned of the removal of our furniture, our tapestries, our clocks, and that of this travel case." Andermatt lost his temper. "Come now, monsieur, you display quite an assurance. In any case, nothing proves that this travel case belonged to you." "Yes, monsieur, the initials engraved on each object. L.E.D. Louis d'Estours de Davrachamp. It was the name of my great-grandfather, and it is mine, as my calling card attests." This time Madame de Horven protested. "And you think I'm going to keep this case? I consider it your property, my dear friend. You may do with it what you please, madame, but whether it is given to you by monsieur or by me, it is yours." "Yours, madame," Karl Andermatt exclaimed vehemently. "It was my share of the booty. I had a right to it, and no one can contest my title of possession, which is as valid as any other." The Frenchman took a step toward him, and with great courtesy asked, "That is one way of looking at it. Do you truly, in your heart and conscience, believe it is the right one?" "Obviously, monsieur," said Andermatt, who was getting worked up, "that is not even up for discussion. However, what if, instead of travel utensils, you had found items of value in this case? Too bad, or rather so much the better. War has its laws. I did not make them." And he added, laughing, for fear of having gone a bit too far in asserting his theories. "Besides, there is nothing there except what is still in it, and which I have presented to Madame de Horven, just items for travel and vanity." "Perhaps you did not look carefully enough," d'Estours pronounced. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean that this small piece of furniture has a very curious cabinet work, full of surprises, and that your searches may not have been sufficient. Andermatt grew impatient. Explain yourself, monsieur. The Frenchman smiled. One could feel that he was more and more master of himself and of the events. No quarrel, no scandal, a beautiful denouement, commanded by the circumstances themselves. My little story seemed to interest you, monsieur, he said. This one will not be long. Just a few words. In 1914, my mother had to flee before the invasion. She took her silverware and her jewelry, but in her haste, she forgot a government bond that made up our entire fortune and of which she did not even remember the number. She knew only one thing, that it had remained in its usual place, that is to say, in this case. Andermatt sneered. A bad hiding place. Better than you think, I assure you. Bah! So many hands have passed through there. Ignorant hands, D.S. Stewart affirmed. What we call in the family the secret of the will, because the place was reserved for the will, constitutes a completely inviolable hiding place, and I do not doubt for a single second that I will find the bond there, if Madame de Horven authorizes me. Oh, D.S. Stewart, said Madame de Horven, who was waiting anxiously, as were all her guests. Do not waste time. All of this is yours, and I would be so happy. Forgive me, he said. I want to make things perfectly clear. Monsieur, is it not true, no longer believes he has the slightest right to this travel case or its contents, since he has presented it as a gift? Certainly, no right, Andermatt declared with anxiety. What is given is given. I have only one word. Then let us search. The young man opened the case, changed the position of the first few objects, closed it again, turned it upside down, pressed two of the copper corners, and the entire bottom tray shifted within its frame, revealing another tray that seemed to slide over the first like one board over another. Between the two, there was a sheet of paper. Desters unfolded it. It was a government bond. There was a clamor of contentment in the salon. Madame de Horven had tears in her eyes. Karl Andermatt, congested, his forehead covered in sweat, clenched his fists. Very amiable, D.S. Stewart showed him his mother's signature, written in red pencil, and he added, No possible mistake is there, monsieur, and my predictions were correct. Oh, it is not a very large fortune, 24,000 francs of annuity at 3%, not even 500,000 francs of capital. Let us note, however, that at the current exchange rate, you would have drawn more than 2 million marks from it. He turned to Madame de Horven. Excuse me, dear madam, but the banks are not yet closed, and I have time to have this sent to my mother. It will be such a joy for her that I do not want to delay. He kissed the young woman's hand, bowed to the other people, and went out with a brisk step, casting a salute to Karl Andermatt that expressed all the share a gallant man takes in the grief of one of his fellow men. The Oath by Maurice Leblanc. Remember that you have to go to the chateau, Germain, Zerman. Yes, mother, said Germain. I will go now, but tell me what I am to do there. Germain and her mother were in a small, sparsely furnished room opening on the garden. The light was beginning to fail. The clock of the village church struck 4. Germain lit the lamp and placed it on a mahogany escritoire at which a young man sat writing letters. He raised his head, and the two exchanged a loving smile. It is this, said the mother. I had a letter from the Countess this morning. You know she has left here to go to Nice. Well, it appears that she forgot her traveling clock on the mantelpiece in the boudoir, and she asked me to send it on to her at once. But why not write to the caretaker at the chateau? The caretaker is away. He has gone to Paris for his daughter's wedding, and he has left the keys with me. But I have told you all this before. Where are your thoughts, Germain? With him, said Germain, softly stroking the young man's hair. André Darvin. André Darvin bestowed a second look of infinite affection upon the girl to whom he was to be married next month, and he asked, Would you like me to go with you, Germain? No, why should you? Think of your letters. They must all be posted today. Are you not afraid? Afraid of what? Of going by yourself. There has been some talk of burglaries in the neighborhood. She burst out laughing. Burglaries are not committed by day. I shall be back in half an hour, before it is quite dark. He glanced at the clock. In half an hour? Very well. If you are not here by 4:45, I will come to the chateau to fetch you. Then I will run. She did not run. She walked away quietly, with the peace and confidence that lay at the bottom of her nature. She was a serious, thoughtful girl, very sure of herself, and always acted with a sort of smiling gravity. She was one of those women who are made to be joyful and happy, and who bring joy and happiness to those whom they love. And she adored André and had given him her whole life. The gate of the chateau was 500 yards from the village, at the end of a fourfold avenue of fir trees. She opened the gate and walked up the drive that encircled the lawn. On reaching the front steps, she seemed to hear a noise, but paid no attention to it, thinking that it was merely the sound of the wind or some other unimportant thing, and she opened the hall door. She knew the way, for she had often been to call on the Countess. She crossed the entrance hall, therefore, and turned down a wide passage that ran behind the reception rooms. The click of her heels rang on the echoing flags. "I am none too early," said Germaine to herself. "I shall only just be able to see." There was a door in front of her. She felt for the handle, turned it, and walked in. What followed was quick as lightning and immediate. Two hands seized her by the throat and forced her to the floor. She gave a scream, which was stifled by the pressure around her neck. And, as she fell, she saw, behind the man who held her, other men bending over her, with hard faces and wicked, shifty eyes. "Don't wheel it, you're shyant. What's that'll have who's text for AI voiceover / Do not let go of her," said one of these men. "And as for you, little one, do not you stir, or we will settle your business." "Much better settle it at once and have done with it," growled one of his companions. She was bound with cords, a gag was thrust in her mouth, and she felt the hands, those terrible hands, strangling her. Fainting, resigning herself to the doom that seemed inevitable, she let herself go. But a rough, imperious voice ordered, "Hands off! At least wait till we know what it is all about. Where do you come from, little one? What are you doing here?" He spoke in a tone of such authority that the others obeyed. He loosened Germaine's bonds, stared at her in the semi-darkness, and exclaimed, "Hello! Why, I know the girl." Germaine recognized him also. He was an old servant of the house, who had been with the Countess for a good many years, until the day when she had occasion to dismiss him after the rather mysterious disappearance of a piece of jewelry. He went on, "Yes, I know her quite well. She used to go to Mass with my lady. She's one of the pious ones. This very morning, when I was mooching around, I saw her coming out of church with a chap from town. Her young man. So they told me." Germaine shuddered from head to foot. André Darvin was coming. She had not thought of that since those men had knocked her down. And now, suddenly, she remembered. André was coming. He had said, "If you are not here by 4:45, I will come to the chateau, to fetch you." He would come for her, therefore. He would walk in. The man who appeared to be the leader stooped forward and said, "Here, little one, you mean to give me away, I suppose." "No, I do not." He gave a laugh. "You are frightened, pretty face, and you are ready to promise anything. But you need not trouble. We shall not hurt you. What is the good? We shall have quite an hour or two to empty the chateau before they get alarmed about you and come to look for you. That will do us. You can give me away as much as you please afterwards. I will take some finding by that time." She raised her voice and declared, "It is not in 2 hours, and it is not in 1 hour that they are coming. They will be here in 10 minutes at the outside." "What is that?" All the scoundrels grew restless and excited, prepared to fly. One of them shouted, "Off we go. Let us clear out." "You are an ass," said the leader. "We have not moved a thing yet, and you talk of going. Suppose we get nabbed? You idiot. So you want to lose the chance of a lifetime, a house that is good as belongs to us, with no one to look after it, crammed with valuables which are ours for the taking, clocks, loads of curiosities, a gorgeous heap of things which we have only got to carry through the grounds and pack into the motor. Is that what you want to do? But shut up, you loony. I have an idea." He bent over Germaine once more, and, with his face close to her and his eyes in hers, asked, "Who is coming to fetch you?" "The gentleman I am engaged to, and 2 of his friends." "Humbug! Your young man all by himself. He carries a revolver. He will shout for help. That will do. Do not waste words. Do you love him? Yes. Very well there. You are free. Yes. Run away as fast as you like. Only what? If you meet him, take him by the arm and go home like a good little girl. Not a word about us before tomorrow. Is that a bargain? Absolute silence. I think it is worth it, considering that we are making you a present of your life and your sweethearts. It is a bargain. You swear. I swear. I want more than that. Swear it on the head of your intended, on his eternal salvation and on your own. She repeated, I swear it on the head of my intended, on his eternal salvation and on my own salvation. Capital. He at once released her. Itis madness, said one of the accomplices. She will talk. She will not talk, said the leader. I know the creature. I have had to do with her before. She is built up of religion and scruples. She will not talk. Still, enough of this. I'm taking everything on myself. Pack up the things and look sharp about it. He went with the young girl to the front door. It is an oath by the holy name of God. By the holy name of God, she said gravely. Then off with you, he said. I shall remain here behind this door until they have finished. If anyone comes in, it will be a bad lookout for him. Just one with a knife is what he will get. Goodbye, pretty face, and pray for me. She went away. This time she ran, and her eyes searched the darkness wildly, seeking to discover the outline of Andre's figure. But he did not come to meet her. Suddenly she stopped. Two gendarmes passed, and an impulse drove her towards them. But no, she cannot do it. The sacred words engraved in the depths of her being, engraved on her strict conscience, compelled her to silence. To perjure herself would bring ill luck to the man she loved, ill luck to their love. She had no right to speak. She continued her road. Besides, the village clock struck one, as it did at the quarters. The danger was past. So she went in, and the moment she crossed the threshold, unable to stand on her feet, losing her last atom of strength, she dropped into a chair in the hall. She heard two voices speaking in the little room adjoining. Her mother and Andre had not moved. They were talking while awaiting her return. There she remained, for long, with her hands folded, trembling with happiness, blessing God and thanking him with all her heart and soul. And she wept for joy, and she thought that life was an exquisite thing, and that there was nothing sweeter in the world than love. Her mother found her sitting in the little hall, scarce lit by the flame of a candle. What are you doing? I walked rather fast. I was resting. One idea. By the way, have you brought the Countess's clock? Germaine had not thought of that. She said the first thing that came into her head. Yes, I gave it to the cook to pack up. Her mother said, but you cannot stay here forever. Come along. I must talk to you. There is something important to be done. What about? About the banns. The curé proposes to read them from the pulpit on Sunday, and this is Friday. I will go and see him tomorrow, said Germaine. You need not do that. He is here now. Here? Yes. He and I were chatting while waiting for you. Oh, murmured Germaine, beginning to entertain a vague feeling of uneasiness. Well, if he is here, he could arrange with Andre. But Andre has gone out. What? He went to meet you. Did you not see him? What? What are you saying, mother? Cried Germaine in a choking voice. She was standing up now, with contorted features, mad with anguish. But mother, he cannot have gone out, or I should have seen him. Why excite yourself? Asked the mother. It is quite simple. Andre finished his letters very quickly. He must have taken them to the post, and from there gone to the chateau by the short cut. Germaine staggered, affrighted. She remembered the man over there behind the hall door with a knife in his hand. And she thought also of her stupid oath, of the two gendarmes, and suddenly she rushed out of the house. Could Andre not have arrived? Could she possibly come up with him in time? She cried out as she ran. She screamed, "Help! Help! This way! To the chateau! Chateau!" A number of peasants came running after her. In a few minutes she had reached the gate, raced across the lawn, up the steps. The door was open, but in the hall, her feet at once struck against something lying on the flagstones. She stooped and touched a lifeless body. The peasants came up. By the light of the matches, she recognized her betrothed, leaden-hued, with a dagger in his throat. He lay dead. Germaine uttered not a wail, not a moan. She snatched the dagger and, at one blow, plunged it into her heart. Maurice Leblanc, The Price of Happiness. The same year made them orphans. They had the same guardian, an old officer who gathered them at his home every morning and spoke to them of honor and duty. When he died, they were sent to the same college. And thus, Tristan de Caorches and Geoffrey d'Ecajol spent their entire youth together. Similar tastes settled them in their country permanently. It was the rugged country surrounding Mortagne. The quarries that furrow it like wounds reveal its granite skeleton. Ancient forests cover it with a harsh and tangled growth. Centuries of barbaric heroism sleep there, an irrevocable sleep where, like dreams, float the legends of the Chouans and the wars against the English. The two small castles they inhabited seemed like stone caskets for the pious relics of his feudal past. Tristan's clung to the barren side of a hill, with the angles and peaks of its turrets, its pepper-pot roofs, and its lead gargoyles, while in a nearby valley, at the heart of the cypress wood, the manor of Geoffrey d'Ecajol entrusted the proud silhouette of a tower to the stagnant water of a pond. They lived simply and robustly, having but one purse and one heart. Beautiful horses grazed in their meadows. They had good guns and good dogs. People from the town and the surrounding areas came willingly to their table and their hunts, for they were welcoming and generous. But no pleasure seemed comparable to that which they drew from their manly friendship. There lay the secret of their good humor, the cause that made their eyes smiling and their lives easy. They looked at each other with the confident certainty of those whom death alone would part. Around the age of 30, Tristan met at a neighbor's house a young girl whose naive grace captivated him. He loved her. Genevieve submitted to his love. The marriage took place. This new state of affairs brought no change to the existence of the two friends. It did not seem to them that the slightest element of awkwardness had slipped between them. Toward her husband's friend, Genevieve showed herself to be gentle, affectionate, and natural, and Geoffrey d'Ecajol opposed this cordiality with neither stiffness nor jealousy. Every evening, as before, he went up to the castle of Caorches. Friendly hours slipped away by the fireside or under the light of the stars. And, in this manner, 3 years passed. One afternoon, as they were returning from the hunt, Tristan found on the balustrade of the porch a letter in which he recognized Genevieve's handwriting. He read, "I am leaving. You will never see me again. Forgive me." He fell unconscious into the arms of his friend. For 2 weeks, he was between life and death, and for 4 other weeks, he had to keep to his bed. Geoffrey settled near him, did not leave him for a single minute, and saved him. But, still fearing that his despair might push him to some fatal resolution, he remained 6 months more at the castle of Caorches. Finally, to distract him, he took him away. And it was across Europe, a meticulous journey of 3 years, where they searched every country, hoping that the chance of a meeting or a conversation would put them on the track of the fugitive. But the days slipped away, and each of them added a little shadow to the mysterious night that enveloped the disappearance of Genevieve. They returned to Brittany. The very evening of his arrival, Tristan, fleeing memories too painful, came to ring at the manor of his friend. He spent the night there, and the following days and nights, and never again did he see the turrets and battlements of Caorches. He made long detours so as not to approach it. and life was monotonous. A melancholy as thick as the mist that hung at twilight over the dreary ponds hid from them henceforth the joy of beautiful sights and made them forget the sweetness of living. Perhaps, in the long run, Tristan's wound healed, but he never laughed, and his vague eyes seemed always to look toward things vanished or invisible. Geoffrey cared for him with a motherly tenderness, and, without ever speaking to him of the past, consoled him silently with his gentle caresses. Often, in the dark hours, he would take his head between his hands and lean it against his shoulder. The other let himself be treated like a child. Their tears flowed, and Tristan would murmur, "I am well. It is only here, in your arms, that I am well." One day, after 12 years of this existence, while little by little forgetfulness descended into him, he fell from his horse and was killed. At the edge of the grave, Geoffrey fell to his knees, and he stayed a long time with the dead. He wrung his hands, he kissed the earth and wet it with his tears. He left only after the arrival of Tristan's favorite dog, an old dog that came to take its place to die. Then, with a stooped back and a slow gait, he returned to his dwelling. At the threshold, he called his servant, a faithful servant who had raised him. He said to him, "Give me the key." Having taken the key, he crossed rooms, followed corridors, and climbed the narrow staircase that wound inside the tower. The sound of his steps echoed, as if in the hollow of a cave. Openings pierced the wall, like underground passages at the end of which burst the light of day. A massive door stopped him. He opened it. He entered a large round room where the slit of a single window shone. Without strength, he fell onto a chair and began to sob. Then Genevieve surrounded him with her arms and said to him, "Cry, my lover, cry." He wept abundant tears, and she said, "Cry well, mourn your friend with all your grief and all your friendship, but mourn him without remorse. I have none, I have never had any. We did for him all that we could do, and thus all that we ought to do. For 15 years, so that his heart as a friend would not be broken like his heart as a husband, you endured the torture of seeing him unhappy and witnessing the grief that we had caused. Go, my friend, you have done your duty, and more than your duty." He raised his sad face toward her and uttered, "And you, Genevieve, you who for 15 years have remained locked up here, a prisoner, alone all through the days, alone for entire years." They looked at each other with pride, proud of themselves and of their nobility. Genevieve had almost white hair and the ivory complexion of those who are never bathed by the outside air. "Ah, Genevieve," he stammered, "how we love each other. Our love is above all infamies. I love you more than my conscience." They felt themselves the slaves of something infinitely great that placed them outside the ordinary conditions of life. Duty changes according to the beings. Their duty was to love each other, and they loved each other. "Genevieve," he said, "you are free now. Your prison is going to open." She shook her head gravely. "No, Geoffrey, no. His honor must not be soiled, even after his death. No one must know our fault. It is the ransom of my crime, and I have no right to evade it. And besides, I am dead. My grave is here. Let me remain buried in it." And she said again, with an adorable smile, "And besides, you see, I love my prison. All my life is there, between these old walls, all my happiness. I no longer have any desire to walk on roads, to see horizons, to smell living flowers. All of that frightens me. Oh, my darling, there is no landscape in the world that is worth to me the few trees I see from my window and the reflections that sleep on the water of the pond.